Hi again, Mark here from Talking Bass. Today I'm going to show you a surefire method for learning any line on bass, no matter how difficult or complex. Now, I'm sure most of you have run into a bass line or a fill or some other thing on bass at some point that's completely baffled you. It could be too fast, too long to memorize, too tricky in the fingering, too tricky in the picking. There's a bunch of problems that could be the roadblock in learning whatever it is, and this could be at any stage of your development from absolute beginner to virtuoso. So today I'm going to show you a simple step-by-step method that you can use for methodically working on any line, no matter what the style and no matter what problems you're facing. And to do this, we're going to work on a short phrase from a solo by jazz legend Charlie Parker that sounds like this. Now, some of you, especially of a beginner to intermediate level, will be thinking, what the hell? I can't play that. You might have never heard Charlie Parker. You might hate jazz. You might hate the idea of soloing like that on bass, but that's all irrelevant. This is the perfect example of a line that many bass players will need to work on for a little while at least, just to get it under the fingers, never mind building it up to speed. And it's the perfect line to demonstrate this method because if that sounds really difficult to you and you can get it under your fingers by the end of this lesson, well, that's going to make for some great optimism going forward with more general bassy bass lines. So that line on bass sounds like this. Now, it's worth mentioning that I do also cover this line in the Technique Builder course over at the Talking Bass website. That course covers every aspect of technique and builds up your technical prowess by way of 60 short and focused etudes. This line is used in that course as an example of jazz transcriptions, but there are a ton of much easier etudes, so don't worry, it's not all, jazz. So if this lesson helps you out, go check out the course at the site. So what's this method that I'm talking about? Well, what we're going to do is break the line down and build up progressively from a few initial notes, adding one or two each time, perfecting the technique, building the speed, adding more notes, rinse and repeat. Now, there are a few precursory things that I need to point out first. These are really important, and as I run through them, I want you to think of these as guidelines, not just for something like a jazz solo transcription like this, but also for anything that you're trying to learn. It could be a Les Claypool bass line like Tommy the Cat. It could be a Rush tune like YYZ. It could be a Black Sabbath bass line. It could be a Motley Crue bass line. Whatever you're working on, no matter how easy or how, objectively difficult it is, these guidelines apply. First, do not use a metronome for this. You don't want to add pressure to the process. You can do all of that later once you have the thing well and truly under your fingers, but during the learning process, you need to feel as little pressure as possible. You want the line to feel easy at every point, and that comes from playing the line slowly with consistent technique, out of time or just in your own organic time. Pressure and rushing the process is going to hinder the progress. Second, be patient and be relaxed at all times. Like I said, rushing is going to hinder your progress. Be sure to keep both hands relaxed and focus on good technique. If you tighten up, you're going to lose stamina, you're going to lose speed, and you're going to lose patience. So relax. And thirdly, play as slowly as you need to when learning the notes. Again, don't rush. The one thing every musician with any amount of technique knows is that you master technique at a slow speed. Higher speeds come with familiarity of a line, familiarity of the notes, familiarity of the fingering, familiarity of the picking. You're drilling physical movements and you need to practice them slowly. This is also key to memorizing the line. Familiarity of the line just comes with playing it over and over again with purpose and also an analytical mind. Look for familiar patterns. Look for anything that's going to help, but do it slowly. If you're having any kind of problems, just take it slower. No matter how slow you need, slow, consistent practice is the key to success here. So one way to learn this line would be to just learn all of those notes in one go. But a lot of you are going to find that very difficult. It's going to be very hard to just get them under your fingers and, learn the whole thing. Now, if you're a reading musician, yes, you could read it very slowly, one note at a time, just reading it over and over again. That's great if you're a good reader. Now, if you're not as good a reader, you're probably going to want to try and memorize this thing, slowly. But don't try learning the whole thing. Just learn it in small chunks. What you can then do is let's say you start with the opening line, you can just start with the opening arpeggio. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with just a very small chunk and then just add to it progressively. So the very first lick is going to sound like this. Now, it's important to know that you're starting on the and of 1 here. So it's in swing time, so it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and. So 1, ba 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 bam. So if you have any kind of chord tone knowledge, harmony knowledge, you might see this as a G flat major 7. But it's actually a part of a E minor 7 chord here. So we're actually starting, on the second leading into the third. It's an approach note. But don't worry about all of the nuts and bolts at the moment. That's just if you do know that. It can be quicker to learn it. So what we've got here is, we've got the F into the G flat there on the A string. So that's going to be the 8th to the 9th fret. Then we come up through the B flat and the D flat there, 8th fret and 11th fret on the D string. And then we finish up with the F there at the 10th fret of the G string. So that's all you need to work on to begin with. Just starting that. So I'm going to be hammering on those first 2 notes. I'm not picking everything. So just those first 2 notes. That's just 8th fret to the 9th fret. If that's too hard for you, just start with the first 2 notes. Just pick that F, hammer on the G flat. Anybody could do that. Okay? And remember, it's on the end of 1, so 3, 4, 1. And that's leading into 2. 1 and 2. Okay? So then add the next 2 notes. Again, I'm hammering them on. So I'm picking on that B flat at the 8th fret of the D string and hammering on at the 11th fret there for the D flat. Now, in terms of the picking hand there, you can just pick with the first finger for both of those. Or you can start with the second finger. So you've got second finger, first finger. But whatever you do, when you get to the top, you want to be on the second finger because we're going to be playing. So it's very important that you start that part of the line with the second finger, because that's going to make a big difference going forward. So all of these little technical these technical aspects of the line, you need to bear them in mind as you're playing at a slow tempo, because when you're trying to do all of that fast, thinking, I need to be on this finger and this finger, it's not going to happen at high speed. You'll probably just go with the way that kind of habitually feels right, but sometimes that's not the right way because you're going to run into problems further down the line. So at a very slow tempo, you can practice that movement of picking second finger, first finger, second finger. Just that. And like I say, start incredibly slow. I know I'm lingering on this part of the line, but this is what we're going to be doing going forward. Once you've got this bit down, you just do the same thing, throughout the rest of it. So, as slow as you need to go. If you have to go this slow, most of you should be able to do that. Look for consistency in the hammer-ons. And in terms of the fingering there, it's just in case you've got that bit wrong. It needs to be first finger, second finger, first finger, fourth finger, and then we've got the third finger on the top. And then you can just build up speed on that. 3, 4, 1. Now we're going to add a few more notes. So we've come up to that F, and then we're going to come down through E, E flat, and then the D. So it's just down through the next set of frets on that G string, 9th fret, 8th fret, 7th fret. So remember, we were on the third finger when we reached the F on the top. We're going to have second finger, first finger, and then we're just going to move down with the first finger to the 7th fret there. So, and then we're picking each of those notes. So we had the hammer-ons on the ascent, and now we're picking as we drop. Now bear in mind, we had that triplet in there. We've got the and, 2 and, and then it's just straight eighth notes after that. Start out as slow as you need to, and then, and that becomes an etude in itself. Forget about the rest of the line. You're working on your technique there. So now let's add a few more notes in there. So, okay, so we've reached this D here at the 7th fret of the G string, and then we're going to come down through D flats, C, and B flat on the D string. So that's 11th, 10th, and 8th frets there, which I'm playing with the 4th finger, 3rd finger, and 1st finger. And then we're going to finish on the G flat at the 9th fret of the A string. So, okay, so now we've got a pretty cool little bebop line there. So, again, start really slowly. You know, start from scratch again. Yes, we've built up some speed, but we've just added some more notes. So again, start slowly and just start the whole process again. You know, and this is going to help with memorizing the overall line because we're just running round and round and round on those few additional notes that we've added. Okay, so we're still using alternate picking as we're coming down. Okay, and when you finish on that G flat there, you want to be on the 1st finger. So that's your little waypoint, so you know whether you've kind of gone wrong with the picking. So obviously you don't need to build it up to that speed. You just need to, you know, get it under your fingers first. You know, as slow as you need to. Doesn't have to be all in beautiful time or anything like that. You just get in it under your fingers and then just start building up more speed. Even if it's only to that. I mean, you don't have to keep practicing it until you can get it up to, you know, Charlie Parker speed. You just practice it until, you know, you've got it, and then you can add some more notes. But then when you want to build up speed eventually, again, you can go through this process again, just building up more and more speed on the individual chunks and then adding and adding again. You know, as your technique improves, as the familiarity improves, you can just go through it again and again, same process, just building up the speed a little more. Okay, let's add 2 more notes. So now we're dropping down to the E flat at the 6th fret of the A string and the C there at the 8th fret of the E string. So after we've landed on that 2nd finger there for the G flat there, we're dropping down to the 1st finger for that E flat and the 3rd finger for the C. Okay, and again, it's this cool little bebop line that we've got. So, you know, each individual chunk sounds great in itself. Okay, and again, just rinse and repeat. Just build up the speed a little. Now let's add 2 more notes. So this time we're going to add the A and the G 7th and 5th frets on the D string. So that's going to sound like this. Okay, so again, cool little bebop line. So there I'm actually playing with the, I think it was the 2nd and 1st finger. So we've landed on the 3rd finger for the C down at the 8th fret of the E string, and then we're jumping up for the A there at the 7th fret of the D string with the 2nd finger, and then the 1st finger for the G. Okay, again, take it as slow as you need. And you should only be at this point when you've mastered the previous notes. So when you come back to playing it, you know, if you're thinking, I still don't have that bit, I'm getting lost, I can't remember that. Go back. Don't add the notes until you've memorized and you've mastered the notes prior. That's the whole point of this process. So when I now add that, you know, and you might be trying this and you start going for it and you think, oh no, I can't remember that. Well, that's because you've gone too fast. You've rushed the process. Go back to it and then just build up slowly. So now let's add a few more notes. So that's going to sound like this. Okay, so we're going to have the F, E flat, and D. That's going to be the, the 8th, 6th, and 5th frets on the A string, and the 6th fret for the B flat at 6th fret of the E string. So we've got Okay, and like I said, you should already have those notes down before, so you should at least be able to get consistently to that stage. Now you're just adding in 1, 2, 3, 4 more notes, okay? And at this point, it's worth mentioning that as you build up speed on this, with these kind of bebop lines, these kind of jazz lines, you need to be quite straight with the eighth note. So instead of you don't want that kind of swing. It's much more straight. Now let's add 2 more notes. We're going to add the C and the A on the E string. So that's going to be 8th fret and 5th fret. And it's creating a little enclosure of the B flat there. It's worth mentioning that this tune, Warming Up A Riff, is in B flat. And we're just making a little enclosure before we play the B flat, just in case you want to know the harmony side of this. So here we have. Okay, so you should already be happy with playing. We're just adding at the end. Next, we're going to add this little triplet arpeggio that sounds like this. So here we're playing a B flat major 7 arpeggio, which is going to be B flat at the 6th fret of the E string. Then we're going to come up through D and F, so 5th and 8th frets on the A string, and then the A up there at the 7th fret of the D string. So the note that we played beforehand, the A at the 5th fret of the E string, is leaning us into that triplet there. So we've got the A hammer on into that B flat, and then hammer on again on that 3rd and the 5th there of the arpeggio, so that's 5th and 8th frets. So, and then we just pick again when we get to that A up at the top. So it's the same move as we had up here, but okay. That's a good little exercise in itself. So again, very slowly, 3, 4, 1. Okay, like I said, you should be fine up to the drop down to the A. We're just adding that little move of that triplet there. And then we can just finish off the line with, we come down through this C major arpeggio of G, E, and C. So that's going to be 5th fret on the D string, 7th fret on the A string, and then the 8th fret on the E string. And then the final note is going to be a D on the 5th fret of the A string, and that's going to be played over a C7 chord, I think it is, and so that's actually going to be the major 9th that we're putting in at the end. Again, if you just want to know a little bit about the harmony there. So all of that together is going to sound like this. And that's the whole line. So, like I said, slow, consistent practice, paying attention to the technique in both hands as you go. And don't worry about memorizing the line. That's going to happen naturally because you're going to be running it round and round and round from the beginning in those small chunks. So at the start, you don't have to worry about memorizing it because it's just, you're going to memorize it after playing around that over and over and over again, okay? And then when you add, you don't have to purposefully memorize it. It's just going to happen naturally. So obviously, once you've got the whole line down, you can then go back through it, breaking it down into those chunks if you're having any problems. And like I say, just break it down as slow as you need to. And obviously, I'm not expecting any beginners or even intermediate players to be able to get this thing up to the speed of Charlie Parker. That's something that you're going to have to work on for quite a while. But the line itself, because there's a lot of little technical things to address in here, is really great for anybody of any level, you know, as long as you take it slow enough. You know, so if you were to just start with that, even if you're at a very low level of playing, you know, there's a lot to work on there. You got the hammer-ons, you got to think a lot about muting with the, you know, where your thumb is, the actual order of the picking fingers, the whole thing. But obviously, if you're an absolute beginner, this is going to be a little bit tough, you don't really want to be working on it. But that's not really the point. The point of this lesson is to show how you would use this method for other bass lines. This is about as extreme as you're going to get for something that you're going to learn on bass. You might learn a full jazz transcription of that solo. That's advanced level. But if you're going to be learning much more simple bass lines, like something like that, you can again just break it down. Breaking down the technique. Doesn't matter how easy the line is. And the same goes for YYZ, like I said, Tommy the Cat, all that kind of stuff. As you start to progress, you can just apply this method to every single bass line that you learn. If you're having problems with it, a lot of bass lines, you won't have problems. You can just get it straight under your fingers. And obviously, with experience, you're going to get better at learning things because you're going to see familiar patterns all the time. It's like learning that bass line there. As soon as I learned that line, I could see that major 7 arpeggio, even though it is part of the E flat minor there. But, in terms of an actual finger pattern, I've played that move thousands of times, just working through that, playing through jazz solos, playing it, just as basic exercises. You see that line, and it's familiar. And that's what happens as you start doing this with other bass lines that you're learning. You're going to start seeing familiar patterns. So it's just a lot of this process is just going to happen a lot quicker. But anyway, that is the process. So, like I said, this line is covered in the jazz line section of the Technique Builder course over at Talking Bass, along with 60 short progressive etudes designed to build all areas of your playing technique. So if this lesson has helped, get on over to the Talking Bass site and check that out via the link in the description. There's actually a sale on this week, so you'll get a 30% discount. So go check it out, and I'll see you next week.